Hi, welcome to Stories with me, Shonna. Well, today's the day. Chapter 27 of the Barren Grounds is our final chapter. And I want to thank all the kids and the people who listened with them for joining me on this journey in sharing this very important story by a fantastic indigenous writer. Special shout out to Will, who encouraged me to keep reading. Um, um, I'm so happy that you joined me for this. It's been my privilege to share these words. Um, there's so much to think about when we think about this book. I hope that it's given you ideas about wanting to learn more about Cree culture, wanting to learn more about the land that you live on, the animals of the land and the environment. I hope it's inspired you to want to even keep reading more books by David A. Robertson, because he's such a fantastic Indigenous voice in Canada. Well, as always, I have a cup of tea to help me get focused. And to settle into the words and to let them really enter into my mind. And I hope that you have something to help you relax so that you can really hear the words that the author has created for us. Maybe it's a snack, maybe it's someone that you care about. Take your time, get ready, settle in, and let's get started on the final chapter of The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. Morgan could hear Eli flop onto his bed. He'd wanted to stay in Iski. She knew that, but the allure of an actual bed must have trumped that desire. Boy, they must have been tired, eh? At least for now. Truth be told, in the end, Morgan hadn't wanted to leave either, but at the same time, she knew they would go back, so she enjoyed flopping onto her own bed too. It felt like a luxury, not unlike the time they'd had pemmican early on in their journey, or wapos, rabbit, remember, near the end of it. Sleeping on the ground in their hut was like jerky and broth. Sleeping on a bed was like freshly caught wapos. It was just before 6 o'clock in the morning, which meant she didn't have to get up for a little under an hour. James usually woke up at 6:45. Neither she nor Eli had slept last night in the North Country, and any amount of rest would do. She closed her eyes. At first, her mind flooded with memories of her time on Iski. The images that came to her, one after another, were like a lullaby. Even the bad memories, like the wolf dragging Eli out of the hut, presented themselves as steps on a journey that had led them to saving Missoua and all of Iski. Okay, Ochik had done the main saving, but she and Eli had played their parts as well, and that was something. She had the tobacco tie in her left palm as proof of their involvement, of their importance. Remember that tobacco is a sacred medicine that was gifted to her by the bear in Missoua. Eventually, as the blue glow of the early morning rested over Morgan's body, those images, those memories gave way to a rhythm like the beat of a drum. Thump, 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 thump. Morgan's ear was pressed against the pillow, and she realized that it was her heartbeat. Not pounding out of her chest, not jackhammering from fear, but beating calmly, methodically. She focused on the rhythm, and as she did, another scene played in her mind of its own accord. Morgan was walking through a field of deep, untouched snow in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, out on the land. The night was the blackest black. It was all around her, in all directions except ahead. There a square of light shone. She was walking towards it, lifting her knees up over the surface of the snow, stepping forward over and over again. Each time she pressed her foot into the snow, a crunching sound rang out through the otherwise quiet space. The crunching sound, no matter how fast she tried to walk, was always in time with the rhythm of the drum, with the beat of her heart. Thump, 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 thump. As she came closer to the square of light, Morgan became aware that it was a window at the center of a small house, a bungalow. The house was at the tree line of a wooded area. Soon the gentle light stretched towards her over the snow like a path, and she followed it all the way to the window. She could see a bedroom through the window. There was a lamp on a side table and a rocking chair. A woman was sitting in the rocking chair and using the chair as intended, rocking back and forth with a child in her arms. A young girl, no older than 3. Morgan reached forward as though she could touch them from outside the window, standing knee-deep in the snow, her fingertips pressed against the cold glass, and she was inside the room. The crunching gave way to her actual heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. She was in the middle of the room, facing the rocking chair. Her mother was in the chair. Her mother's arms were empty. Her mother was crying and whispering one word over and over to the rhythm of the drum. Kisakatotiso, kisakatotiso, kisakatotiso. I haven't, Morgan whispered. I haven't forgotten myself. Her mother gasped. She'd been looking towards the door, but looking away from it now, looked up to Morgan. She stood, and Morgan and her mother were face to face. I did, maybe, Morgan said, but I found myself again. My girl, her mother whispered, tears streaming down her cheek, curling over her lips. My girl, Kisakatitan. I love you too, Morgan said, and she tasted salt water against her tongue. Her tears mirrored her mother's, as if somehow they were on the same path, if only right now. Her mother reached towards Morgan, and Morgan did the same, and as soon as their fingertips touched, Morgan felt the same pull she'd felt the first time she'd arrived in the North Country. She felt the pull, and then she was pulled away as though in a vehicle going at the speed of light. She woke up in her bed, her arm outstretched towards the bedroom window, the tobacco tie clutched in her hand. In the book, there's the constellation of Ochik. Remember, it was a square with a broken tail. What do you think, that dream? Do you think that Morgan actually was able to, in a kind of mystical, magical way, reach out to her actual mother and somehow send that message, that sacred message, that she remembers who she is, who she came from. She remembers her mother. She remembers where she was born and where she belongs. Do you think that was maybe a sacred gift? I don't know. She had the tobacco, the sacred medicine in her hand, and that thump, like the sacred sound of the drums for her people. I don't know. She's come a long way since the beginning of the book. When Morgan arrived at the breakfast table after taking her time getting ready for the day, she found James, Katie, and Eli were already there. Their plates were in front of them, but untouched. They were waiting for her. James had prepared a meal exactly like the one he'd made yesterday over a week ago to Morgan, and even longer for Eli, but the food had not been constructed into faces. "You look tired," Katie said. "Yeah." Morgan sat down, ready to dig into her food, and as soon as she sat down, Eli started in on his meal. Morgan couldn't help but notice the look of relief on the faces of Katie and James. "Were you guys up all night?" James asked. "Eli looks just about as rough." "We were hanging out," Morgan said, and her eyes met those of smiling Eli. "Well, that's awesome that you two are getting along," Katie said. "He's growing on me." Morgan started to eat. Within seconds, she was half finished. She hadn't noticed how hungry she was until she had a plate of bacon, eggs, and hash browns in front of her. "Breathe, Morgan," James laughed. But Eli was shoveling food into his mouth just as quickly. She couldn't help but imagine the animal beings in Missoua right then, how they'd be able to eat a big meal now. Their meat racks would be full like their bellies. They'd have fat under their fur, not just skin and bones. By now it had been over an hour since they'd left. That meant Missoua had been without her and Eli for at least a week. She couldn't wait to see how different things would be when they went back. The day was going to pass slowly. It would be agonizing. By the time Katie and James were asleep, it would be almost 15 hours from now. Months in Missoua. "You wore your moccasins," Katie said. Morgan looked down at her feet, where, in fact, she was still wearing the black moccasins. To Katie, Morgan had only had them for less than a day. But oh, the places she had traveled in them. Through blizzards, forests, over canyons and mountains across the Barren Grounds. They looked months old. Thankfully, Katie didn't seem to notice how dirty and worn they were. She was probably just so happy to see Morgan wear them that those little details escaped her. "I did," Morgan said. "They're great." Katie looked to be holding back her emotions, seeing Morgan wear her 2-month anniversary present. "You can wear those to school, you know," Katie said, gathering herself, "even walking to school." "Really?" Morgan glanced at Eli and winked to her brother. "I totally didn't know you can go on long walks with these." "Yes, she did." "Well, school isn't that far," James said, "but maybe you could test them out and see how they hold up." "Maybe I could," Morgan said, and then she and Eli broke into laughter. And that is the end. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this journey of reading this wonderful book together, where we learned more about how to honor the environment, how we learned about the importance of storytelling and sacredness of things in the Cree culture, where we learned about the importance of being respectful to the land and each other. So many things to think about in this book. I appreciate your time, and I'm honored to be able to share these words with you. Thank you very much. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.